Part of this video is sponsored by Sunflex UK. More on them later in the video. In this video, I want to show you how to create a kitchen that becomes the center of family life. Hello, if you're new to the channel, my name is Neil and I have been a self-employed architect in the UK since 2009. In my day job, I specialize in designing private homes. Now, since I'm an architect and not an interior designer, this guide is based on the assumption you aren't just replacing the existing kitchen units. I'm assuming you want to create a brand new kitchen where there wasn't one before, either altering or extending your home or building a new house from scratch. We aren't just talking about choosing worktops, we're going right back to basics and looking at the size, location and layout of the kitchen space. Much of the information in this design guide will apply anywhere, but I should also say that since this is a UK-based channel, I'm going to reference building regulations in this country. If you are watching from outside the UK, be sure to take advice from an experienced local architect on which regulations apply to your kitchen. And if you're wondering how building regs affect kitchens, you might be in for a shock, so stay tuned. I'm going to use images from several of my designs, including this project, as an example. It's a new kitchen in an old building, and thanks to Square Foot Media for the video and images. There wasn't a kitchen in this room before, and getting one into the space was not as easy as you might think. Now, since we're talking about old buildings, let's start with a short history lesson. In today's world, kitchens are the center of family life, but it wasn't always like this. Historically, the kitchen was one of the lowest status rooms, even in very expensive homes. In this property, the main drawing room has a telltale feature. This alcove is known as a buffet recess. Every day, the servants would make food in the kitchen, put the food on a trolley, and place that trolley in the buffet recess, from where it would be served to the owners of the house. This is the original kitchen in the house before we built the new kitchen. It's cramped, unloved, and you wouldn't entertain guests in there. I've spent my career altering older properties. It seems that in homes from the 1740s right through to the 1970s, the kitchen was an afterthought. It's only within the last few decades that kitchens have moved front and center. I'm going to talk about new buildings as well as old. If some of this isn't relevant for you, I've divided the video into different chapters so you can skip ahead to a section that reflects your property. So this is my design guide on how to create a great kitchen for modern life. If you are building a completely new space, say a house extension or a new home, use the Tesco test when thinking about your kitchen. Imagine you come back from grocery shopping and have to carry bags from your driveway to the kitchen. How many doors do you really want to go through before getting to that kitchen? Ideally, the fewer the better. So when planning the location of a new space for your kitchen, take into account how far you will have to walk when carrying groceries. Another way to look at this is that any well-designed home should have a clear split between public and private spaces. If you want the kitchen to be the center of family life, somewhere you will entertain guests to your home, you need to consider how these guests get to the kitchen. Will they walk past kids' toys, dirty laundry, or the bathroom? No, they should come straight into the kitchen from the outside, and there should be a separate access to the more private areas of the house. Take this house extension as an example. We kept the existing front door, but created a new entrance at the driveway where you can walk straight into the kitchen. The client loves this and called it their wow space. We also created a separate access from the open plan space to the bedrooms. Now, if you're altering the internal layout of your existing home and not building a new extension, things like drainage become much more important. In this project, the original kitchen overlooked the rear of the property, but the client wanted a new kitchen which overlooked the street. There were 3 rooms which qualified, but this one is too small, and this one doesn't have access to drains. The property is a mid-level flat. There are neighbouring properties above and below, so we can't just dig new drains into the ground. We have to work with what's already there. By a process of elimination, that left this room. It overlooks the street, and we could run the drainage from the new kitchen sink to the existing drains at the rear of the property. Those blue lines on the drawing are the new drains. If your property is a flat with neighbours below, you can't just lift the floorboards and shove drains in there. There are legal issues to consider. No matter how thick the floor, there will be a point in the middle where your ownership stops and your neighbour's ownership begins. The building regulations also have something to say about floors between different properties. Aside from any structural issues, and I will get to that, A separating floor needs to provide a certain amount of fire resistance and acoustic separation. It doesn't matter if your flat is a modern construction or a 200-year-old one like this. If you place drainage pipes under the floor, it could compromise the fire and acoustic separation. In an older property, built using traditional methods, this gritty stuff is called ash deafening. It usually can't be touched, as it provides the density necessary to reduce noise between properties. Even if a pipe can be placed within the deafening, you will probably have to cut through a structural joist, and that could literally bring the house down. In this job, I designed the new drains to run above the floor and hid them inside a false wall in the bedroom next door. The same false wall was also used to accommodate other essentials. Remember, a pipe from a kitchen sink or dishwasher will be about 50 millimeters in diameter, and it can't be laid flat. It must fall using a ratio of 1 in 80. For every 80 units of measurement the pipe runs horizontally, it must drop 1 unit vertically. The pipes from this kitchen ran 12 meters from the sink to the existing drains at the rear. They had to fall 15 centimeters in total. If they had been located in the floor, it is certain they would have crossed the legal boundary with the neighbours below, and the existing timber floor joists would have to be butchered to make way for the pipes. Practical issues like this often determine the location of kitchens, and in particular the kitchen sink, in older properties. Some clients ask me if they can use pumps for the kitchen sink. The building regulations require that every domestic property have at least one sink drained using a gravity-fed system. That's the fancy way of describing water flowing down a pipe, not using a pump. It is possible to have a kitchen sink drained using a pump if there were another kitchen sink somewhere else on the same floor as the kitchen. The kitchen must be on what's called the principal living level, so if you try to pull this trick, the gravity-fed sink needs to be on the same floor as the sink using the pump. Pumped systems often use narrower pipes and can pump wastewater vertically, so they offer significant design flexibility. Imagine this client wanted a sink on the island. We couldn't make gravity-fed drains work for all the reasons I mentioned before, but we could use a pump for a sink in the island as long as the main sink on the worktop behind used traditional gravity-fed drains. I've looked at this with a few clients but never actually gone ahead with it. Most people just don't have the space to do it. Which brings us to the next question. How much space should a kitchen have? There are two factors at work here. First is the practical issue of ensuring you have enough storage, worktop and appliances to adequately feed everyone in the house. The other is the building regulations. Again, I occasionally get clients who complain that the building regulations are intrusive and overly onerous, but when it comes to kitchens, the building regulations in Scotland only ask for 1 cubic metre of storage space in a kitchen. A typical floor-mounted kitchen cabinet is 60 centimetres wide, 60 centimetres deep and 1 metre tall. So it would take 3 such cabinets to meet or exceed the minimum requirements for storage in a kitchen. In my experience, this isn't enough storage for a modern family. My own rule of thumb is 2 kitchen cabinets per person, whether adult or child. So a family of 4 should have at least 8 floor-mounted kitchen cabinets. That doesn't include the fridge, freezer, ovens or dishwashers, just cupboards and drawers. This kitchen was designed for a family of 4 and the kitchen has far more cabinets than that. The building regulations also require what they call activity spaces, zones which set out the minimum amount of space needed to use the kitchen effectively. If these aren't specified, some property developers would make kitchens so small they would be impractical. There must be a space at least 1 metre deep in front of an oven and a separate manoeuvring space within the kitchen. That manoeuvring space can be either 1.5 by 1.5 metres or an oval shape 1.8 metres long by 1.4 metres wide. So now you know how much space a kitchen needs. The next thing to consider is ventilation. Cooking creates a lot of steam, and this water vapour has to be removed from the building as quickly as possible, otherwise it will lead to damp and mould. Now, aside from the smell and potential for causing illness, this can cause catastrophic damage if it gets into structural timbers, because over time they will rot. Our building regulations require a kitchen to have a mechanical extractor. That's a fan which sucks air out of the room and vents it to the outside. I've seen so many kitchen companies sell cooker hoods or downdraft extractors to my clients without explaining to them that these must be physically connected to the outside air. If you put a downdraft extractor on a kitchen island, it will have the same problem I mentioned earlier with the sink on the island. The extractor must have a 100mm diameter pipe connecting it to a vent outside. For this reason, whenever I design a kitchen, I always put a separate mechanical extract fan in the room. We placed this one high up and specified a discrete model. The pipe connecting it to the outside air runs in the same false wall that accommodates the drains. This means the kitchen didn't need a hood, which would have cluttered the space. If a kitchen has an independent mechanical extractor, you can still install a hood or downdraft extractor, and this can be a recirculator. The more expensive models sometimes have charcoal filters. These are all fine and well, but on their own, they don't comply with the building regulations. You still need a separate extractor. The building regulations don't ask for a kitchen to have a window for ventilation, which might seem a more natural solution to the problem. Not only that, but in our building regulations, a kitchen isn't required to have natural light. This part of the regs must be read carefully, however, because if the room has other activities, such as living or dining spaces, those activities must have natural light. The regulations require a glazing to be at least 1/15 the floor area. So if a room is 15 square meters, the glass in the window must be 1 square meter. Speaking of windows, now is a good time to mention the sponsor of today's video. Sunflex UK design and manufacture high-quality aluminium doors and windows. I made a feature video showing how their products enhanced this kitchen extension project, which I designed. Sunflex products provide a great balance between cost and quality. If you want to see more, I put a link up above and in the description below. Once we get all the practical and regulatory issues out of the way, we can begin to have some fun designing the kitchen itself. The biggest challenge I feel is getting the flow correct. A well-designed kitchen must have a layout which respects the 3 most important activities in any kitchen: preparation, cooking, and cleaning. You can see this kitchen is laid out with distinct areas for prep, cooking, cleaning. In short, the kitchen sink should not be located between the prep area and the cooking area. If you have a breakfast bar, or if the kitchen space also accommodates a dining table, like this room, the cooking area also becomes the service area, where food is plated up and passed around. Now, this might sound trivial, but I've seen people mess it up. Another big consideration is noise. If you are considering a kitchen in an open plan space, or even just a kitchen diner like this project, do not put the washing machine or tumble dryer in the same room. Create a separate utility room like I did in this flat. You will thank me. I should also say that while I have opinions on elements of kitchen design like worktops, cabinets or handles, I don't actually design the units myself. This is a specialist area, and there are so many different companies offering kitchens in the UK right now, from cheap and cheerful to eye-wateringly expensive. I couldn't possibly compete with these guys, given that kitchen firms offer free design with their units, plus they have far more up-to-date knowledge on the current trends for materials and appliances. I will say that the price of kitchen units can seem hard to justify in some cases. I've seen German kitchens costing upwards of £30,000. I've spoken to specialist manufacturers of hand-built timber kitchen units who don't sell anything under £40,000, and I've been told some kitchens can cost more than the price of a one-bed flat. Like all things in life, there's a sweet spot, a point beyond which the law of diminishing returns kicks in, and the more you pay, the less you get. I have nothing against kitchen companies or interior designers, but I felt discussing the practical issues associated with kitchens would be a worthwhile video to make. If you enjoyed it, hit the like button, and if you want to see more, please subscribe.